So hi everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces in the room. So thank you everyone that is a member and has been here before. And then I also see some new people as well. So excited to have you guys here. My name is Carl Kosla. I'm Executive Director of South Asians in Sports. We're really excited to host this session today with Sean Desai and Manish Mehta. And it's going to be a really great discussion. And we're really happy to have you guys here. And if you just joined, we're kind of all doing little intros in the chat, so feel free to put your stuff in there so that we all know who's here. Very quickly, I'm just going to talk about SAIS for those of you in the room that are not familiar with who we are and what we do. We are a nonprofit community of South Asian professionals that work in the sports industry and athletes globally. We currently have chapters across New York, Toronto, LA. We're just doing our first event in London next week. And we have members from all over the US and Canada, primarily within our database. We have over 1,500 members globally within South Asians in Sports, and we're growing on that every day. We have a free membership. If you're not a member and you just signed up for this event, I highly encourage you guys to go to our website. I will drop it in the chat right now. And just become a member. You can sign up for free, just share your information, then you'll get plugged into our emails, all of our upcoming events and things like that. We also have a premium membership for those of you that are interested in our mentorship program, which is our signature event that we host twice a year. We also give out tickets to sports industry events and conferences, and just more access and visibility for our premium members is kind of what we offer. So feel free to go to our website, check out both of those options. And also our upcoming events, where we're hosting events, like I said, in London next week. We have an event coming up in Chicago on May 17th. And then we have a big event coming up in New York in June, which we haven't posted yet, but it's going to be around the FIFA World Cup with some major players in the soccer space. So that's going to be a really exciting one that's going to be posted soon. So hope to see a lot of you guys there in person in the city as well. Yeah, that's what we do. Neha, did you want to say anything also before we pass it off?
No, you covered it all. Hi, everyone. This is great.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will get right into the main event. We have two really awesome members of the South Asian community here to talk to you guys specifically about football and the NFL, and it's very timely given that the draft was last week. So I feel like everybody's talking about the NFL again right now. It's like the new season has started. I will pass it off to Manish. You guys probably know Manish or have seen him on your TV screens or listened to him on podcasts that you listen to. He was a former beat reporter for the Jets. He's been featured across ESPN, SNY, NFL Network, you name it. And we're really happy to have you here, Manish, to moderate the session with Sean Desai. And I will hand it off to you. I could vouch.
Yeah, I am. Look, I'm thrilled to be the moderator tonight, and exceedingly thrilled to welcome former Chicago, current Cincinnati Bengals senior defensive assistant coach Sean Desai. For those who are unaware, Sean is the first and only defensive coordinator in the 106-year history of the National Football League, having held that role for both the Chicago Bears and more recently the Philadelphia Eagles. Sean's a 2-decade-long life as a football coach has many fascinating twists and turns, which we will discuss tonight. But perhaps the most amazing part of his journey has been his unorthodox path to the NFL. Sean has a BA in philosophy and political science, pre-med from Boston University, a master's in higher and post-secondary education from Columbia University, and finally, a doctorate in educational administration from Temple University. It's funny because I was reading Sean's credentials to a friend of mine recently, and he looked at me and he said, "This guy seems like the most interesting man in the world." So we'll get into a little bit of his backstory. And I think above all else, Sean is the epitome of great work ethic, resilience, and self-belief. And that's what's really interesting to me about his story. And I'm sure he'll convey various touch points along the way for him as well. Welcome, Sean.
Man, Manish, thank you very much. I'm just going to use that soundbite for my resume. I'm gonna just pitch that out there for next time. I appreciate you, man. That's really kind of you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I wanted to, initially just touch on your South Asian identity, professional sports, the NFL specifically, does not have very many South Asians represented in coaching circles. I don't believe there's ever been a South Asian player in the NFL. How has your South Asian identity shaped your professional life over these past several decades?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, a lot of it has been, and I would say this, a lot of it's been the values that I've been raised with. And, I think they might be uniquely South Asian, and I'm sure a lot of people here could relate to that, just in terms of hard work, uh, put your best foot forward every day, be loyal, right? And then let that be your proof. Let that be the way that you earn promotions in advance. Be humble. And that's kind of the values I've stuck to. And fortunately, early on in my career, I got similar advice from one of my mentors in coaching. And, he basically said, just, be quiet, do your job. And if your job is good enough, then people will recognize you'll get promoted. And that's kind of what I've lived. That's kind of been my journey through the NFL and through college football in this profession. And I appreciate it. I know it may not always be to my advantage to be that way at times, but I'm learning as I grow, and that's okay. But I wouldn't change those values for anything, because that's kind of made me who I am and made me the coach and the teacher and the educator that I am and the professional that I am.
How about some of the barriers, the challenges? I'd mentioned off the top, not very many South Asians represented in your field, regardless of whether you're a coach, front office, and obviously in the locker room as a player. Over these past 20 years on the sidelines, what has been, the biggest impediment of your heritage?
Yeah, and I guess you never, when you're in a profession, and I'm sure again many people can probably feel the same way, maybe not, but when I was in this profession, I got started early. I would say my biggest barrier for myself was access, right? And when you get into coaching at higher levels, college, and then for me, the NFL, you need points of access. Everybody needs a point of access, and I didn't have that, right? I didn't play college football, right? And that's usually a traditional path for people. They play college, they play in the NFL, and then they built their relationships and connections through their playing careers that can help them navigate into coaching. And so I didn't have that. And so I don't necessarily attribute that to a South Asian issue, more of a me not being, tall enough, strong enough, fast enough to make it in college sports, right? And maybe you can attribute it to South Asians too. I don't know. But so, that was a big point for me. And so that's why, you read my academic resume there, and that's kind of the path I was on. I was going to pursue my academics. That was, as many of us know, probably non-negotiable with my family. And I did that, and I told them I was going to do it. I was pre-med. I kind of talked to my parents, said, hey, I want to go into education, graduate BU 3 years in 3 years. So I kind of negotiated with them, say, listen, I can still get the pre-med track, but I got this extra year. Let me go try education. So they were supportive. My parents have been great throughout this whole process. They were supportive. Finished that in a year. Did a project over there where I volunteered for one of my master's classes and shadowed their football program. So did that. Just sat in the wall and wrote my report. Left. Graduated. Went to Temple to go get my doctorate. And then, ironically, luck had it that fall. After that fall in 2005, this would have been after the season in fall 2005. They hired Al Golden over there, and one of his first hires was a guy that I shadowed at Columbia, right? And so then I just emailed him, say, hey, man, I'm already on campus. I'm willing to work. I'm willing to do whatever you need. And, the Temple is not a good program. They're looking for all the help they can get at that time. So I just went and volunteered and stuffed mailers and was getting my doctorate at the same time. And I eventually became the academic GA for them. Then, as the story goes, became the special teams GA, became the defensive GA, and you do all the jobs you can until you get promoted. And eventually I got promoted. So that was my access point, is I was just at the place and showed up, reached out and said, I'm willing to help, willing to volunteer, showed up, and then just let my work speak for itself.
I think a fascinating element of your story at Temple was that you were doing all of these things. You did not have a full-time position on the staff. You're essentially a grad assistant. Then an opportunity arises where you could be a full-time professor at George Washington University. And that's a great gig,
Yeah.
I think you're in your mid-20s, early 20s. Al Golden at that point basically said, trust me, stay another year. I can't definitively promise that you'll get a full-time job, but it looks like it's trending in that direction. So in one hand, you have a guaranteed professorship at a prestigious university. On the other, you can still be a volunteer football coach. What went into your thinking, ultimately staying at Temple? Did you bounce that idea off your parents, friends, and why ultimately did you decide to stick with football?
Yeah. No, you got that story right on the head. I mean, it was 2008. I finished my doctorate, defended, went through all the application processes, got offered a job. Like you said, at GW, went back down and said, listen, I got to take this job. I'm basically paying to work here for the 3 years, and got no money, got, as you guys know, no scholarship. So paying all these loans through, all these institutions. And he said exactly that. He said, I don't have a job, but give it 6 months. And if there's movement on the staff, I'll promote you. So I talked to my parents, and then at that time, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, talked to her, and we just made a decision to bet on ourselves. I mean, I was 25, and I kind of just bet on myself and said, what's 6 months? If I feel like I was in position to get a really good job, I might be able to get that job again, right? Nobody's ever going to take my doctorate away from me, right? That's something I've earned. That's something I've got. That's plan B for me right now at my point in my career, which I hope to eventually take up on. But I figured at 25, if I can get that job, I might go through another round of interviews and try to do it again in a year. So that's the decision I made, and we did it. Did the GA thing for another season. And to Al's credit, a guy left the staff. The linebacker coach left, and then he promoted me to outside linebacker coach and special teams coordinator, and that gave me my first access in your first position. Right. So now all of a sudden it just becomes about your resume. Like, are you developing players? Are you building those relationships? Are your guys getting better? How's the performance on the field? What do your stats look like as a special teams coordinator and the linebacker coach? And that kind of launched me up to help me get some other jobs.
I love the fact that you took a quote unquote risk. And I think that's an important lesson for younger people who are watching this tonight, listening to you tonight. As you get older, in so many respects, you get more conservative, whether it's financially with your portfolio or with your career. You want to stay safe and not lose what you already have. But when you are young in your 20s and you're trying to build something, build a career, build a life, those are really the moments and times where you should take risks, should take chances, and not be afraid to fail. And I think that, that story at Temple really encapsulates the importance of that. Betting on yourself clearly has worked out. I want to kind of move forward now to the NFL. It's an alpha male industry. People play at a high level in the NFL before coaching, or they just play, in the NFL for several years as a middling player. You had a standout high school career. You're part of a high school state championship team in Connecticut. However, you did not play in college. You obviously did not play in the pros as well. So given the dynamics of the NFL, a lot of type A personalities, how do you earn respect from players and your peers, other coaches who typically gravitate towards people who did play in college or at the next level in the NFL?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say for me, everywhere in college and the NFL, for me, it's been about what I talked about with those values. It's been about hard work, right? It's been about being prepared, being smart, being confident, and really coming at this from an angle, from a teaching perspective and a player mindset perspective. What can I provide? Because you're exactly right. Like, I mean, I can go look at, and I've coached Pro Bowlers and all pros, and I could go look at them and tell them to do this. Well, they're going to look at me like, well, you've never done this. What do you mean do this? Right. And that's real. I get that. And I think I empathize with that early on. And I said, well, okay, well, what do you think about doing it this way? Well, I don't think about this. Okay, well, once you try this because of X, Y, and Z, I've got some tape to support it. Here's how it's going to help you become a better player. Here's how it's going to help our defense or our system become better. And it's going to accentuate your talents. And I think that's where I've had to kind of set myself apart, right? I have to earn the respect through my knowledge, through my preparation, through my work ethic, and through my relatability to the players, where I can articulate some different concepts and things like that to help develop them and motivate them to perform. Because at the end of the day, no matter what, especially when you're in a profession like mine where, it's very public, right? The results are out on the field, they're getting judged all the time. Uh, Everybody wants to do well. Players want to do well, right? Nobody wants to fail. And they want people around them that are going to help support them to do that. And there's a million ways to do it. And there's a lot of different coaching styles to do it. I have a certain way I like to do it. It's kind of authentic to who I am, with transparency, uh, honesty, preparation, hard work, and holding guys accountable at a high level, but in a positive way. I'm not a big yeller screamer. I'm not a big demeanor, and that's okay. That works for people. That's not who I am, right? So I think people see that authenticity to me, and they kind of gravitate through that. And it's like one of my old coaches told me, just sit down and work. People will notice work, right? People will notice those things. People know that, man, this guy's really prepared. This guy comes to these meetings every day prepared. He comes to these practices every day prepared. He's a young coach. He's essentially a GA, right? A quality control coach in the NFL, but his stuff is always on point. His presentations are always on point. We see the value the coordinator sees in him, and you build those relationships that way. And then when you get your opportunities to actually go coach, whether it's a scout team or whatever, you do it to the best of your ability, right? There's no job that's too low for you. There's no coaching job that's too low for you. There's no teaching job that's too low for you. And then you get those guys better, and you build those relationships, and then you just hope people notice, right? You hope people notice, and when it's time to be in position to get another job or get a promotion, you hope you have some advocates that you've developed because of your work ethic.
Yeah, along those lines, in terms of advocates, mentors, networking, I've always felt that the best teachers, bosses, CEOs, in my profession for a long time, editors, are those who are willing to share information. They're not hoarding the information. They don't think they're above anybody else. And I imagine in your position, working in the NFL, you get queries from South Asian athletes, be they high school or college, and their parents. So what kinds of questions have you received through the years, and how have you helped those people, in steering them in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've kind of gotten it through the gamut, and obviously, probably when I became a position coach at the Bears, your role magnifies and it gets elevated a little bit. And then once you become the coordinator, obviously, the elevation, the publicity of that role becomes even higher. So there's been a lot more reach out that way, which I do my best to try to address them as best as I can. Obviously, I'm busy, and timing is critical in terms of my work schedule and when I can do that. Authenticity, I try to gauge the authenticity of some of these. I mean, you can imagine how many of these things I might get, and it's just an email or a text, or usually not a text. Hopefully not a text. It's usually an email or LinkedIn or something like that, where people reach out, and it's ranged, man, from what do I got to do to become a coach in the NFL? Or what do I have to do to get into the business analytics side in the NFL, or work in ops uh, in the NFL? I'm working in college, or how can I just get access to coaching? Something as simple as that. I'm making a career change. What do you suggest I do to get access to coaching? So it's been that. And then, I try, if I got it and somebody's called me at the right time and it's on the front of mind, I try to just take that number down to that email. And I think I told you, like, I get my time is very sacred to me. As I become older, I think everybody will appreciate that. And Manish, I know you got a newborn too, relatively newborn. Time is of the essence, right? You got to protect that as much as you can. And so, my drives to and from work, from home, I try to, call somebody. I try to do that and pay it forward as best I can. Hopefully the schedules work and we try to do that. And from that point, I be as honest as I can, give them the best advice that I can. And I try to be real, because it's not like, I feel like sometimes, uh, at least the experiences I've had where you're asking for advice and things like that, it can become rosy.
Mm-hmm.
People kind of paint a picture that's like, oh man, just do this and you'll be all right, or go do, well, there's a reality to this that, guess what? It may not be all right. Right. Because whoever you are, and let's say you want to coach the NFL, that's great. There's 32 teams. average 20 teams, 20 coaches a team, right? There's 640 coaching jobs. And there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people that want these jobs. And so what's going to be unique to you for even me to say, yeah, go hire this guy? Right. And so I think there's a reality that people got to face. And once they face that, then go ahead and do it. Like there's nothing wrong with taking that shot, like we talked about earlier. But there's a difference between having a realistic shot and understanding the work and the preparation and the sacrifice it takes to get to the goals you want to achieve, as opposed to just having a goal and say, man, I really wish I want to do that. Well, okay, that's great. We all wish that. Now what? Right? We all want Warren Buffett's money. Right? We all want all that stuff, but okay. So what? Right? You got to go do something about it. And then you got to be willing to do it. Like there's work and there's going to be ups and downs. And I try to have those conversations in a positive way as much as possible, because I don't want to give advice that at some point somebody's gonna be like, well, that guy lied to me. Or he wasn't true, he wasn't truthful. So I try to give him the best experience, the best advice from my own experiences that I can.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's no substitute for action. We can
Right.
romanticize about what we want to do. We can plan until the cows come home, but ultimately you do have to take action. Without action, you're not going to get to where you want to go, regardless of whether it's being a football coach or any other industry. Along these lines of mentoring and networking, as you embarked upon your career, you mentioned Al Golden, the former Temple head coach, who is now the Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator, who you work for. So I see the obvious direct link there. In an industry that doesn't have many South Asians, mentoring and networking, I believe, should be paramount. You had mentioned earlier about the old school work ethic, about putting your head down, proving your worth. And there's a lot of value in that, obviously. But I imagine that there needs to be a balance between being a good soldier and then connecting with these experienced voices in your field who are willing to help you along the way.
Yeah, there has to be, and I will be honest with you, I'm still getting better at that. That's still a work in progress for me. It's not in my nature to network and to seek out other relationships. But to your point of action, I make a list and I try to hit those 5 people up every year or every other month, and I try to be diligent to that. And do I do it every other month that I put it on? No, I'm not great at it still. But I'm trying to get to that 5 number as best as I can. But it's important, man. Like this is a relationship driven business, like most professions are. Right? Like the key in most professions, you need access into the door first, right? Then once you're in the door, you got to be able to work hard and then build your network so you can grow, right? Because everybody, we all know this, right? Everybody, especially when you're in leadership roles, you love the guys that work hard and they're loyal. And guess what? You probably don't ever want to lose those guys if they're working under you. And so you're probably going to try to keep them in their same roles and maybe give them a little promotion bump, but they add value to you that way, right? And that's real. However, that may not be in the best interest of that individual, because that individual is trying to grow and climb. And that's the balance that I've had to navigate a little bit and learn. And I'm still learning it. And you got to balance it and you got to build those relationships. But again, I keep going back to this word authentic because that's really important to me. Right. And in a profession like ours, like you said, it's alpha male, and really any profession. I mean, you go to any Fortune 500 company, there's going to be authentic people and there's going to be not authentic people. Right, there's going to be people that are trying to get on the fast track and climb, and they're willing to do whatever they need to climb. And good for them. That's their path, and that's what they're choosing. Right, our path and my path is a little bit different, and I'm choosing that also. So if my climb's a little bit slower, it is what it is. For me, it's always been about being able to look myself in the mirror and making sure I did live by the values I need to live by, to be the person I want to be the husband I want to be the father I want to be, and be the coach I want to be. And so I'm getting better at that. I think it's critical. I think the people that do it well and do it authentically are probably the best served, because they're doing everything. Like you said, they're working hard, they're having authentic relationships, and they're growing with that. And I'm trying, and I'm getting better at it, but I wouldn't say I'm the epitome of that.
It's really interesting in the NFL and your line of work. It's it's atypical when you look at businesses, because when businesses are looking for people, a CEO is looking for somebody. I think the best CEOs, frankly, hire people who think can ultimately become CEOs of companies. Probably not their company because they want to keep their CEO role, but somebody who has the potential to rise to that level. In your industry, you see head coaches, the best head coaches, bring in young talent, and then just because of the nature of your business, in 5 or 10 years, that head coach who hired a young assistant coach may be working for that young assistant coach who rises to become a head coach himself at some point down the road. So I think keeping the relationships open and honest in your profession specifically is so critical. And I think when you talk to younger people, whether they're trying to get into sports or whatever walk of life or career they're embarking upon, it almost seems that that's an area that gets cut out of the equation. And I think that's a grave mistake, because even though it seems like it's in a job unto itself, networking and in your case, reaching out to 5 people systematically, it's just so important. It's something that isn't talked about, I think, in school, in high school, and in colleges, because in our culture, as you said right off the top, it's about putting your head down, getting good grades, doing well in school, which again are all essential elements to embarking on a successful career. But the networking portion of it is so invaluable, and it's something that it took me decades to truly realize. But I hope that younger people see that it's not just enough to put your head down and work. You really do have to incorporate these other elements that will ultimately help you go to wherever you want to go.
Yeah, I agree. Can't agree more with you on that. And I would add this, like, especially in the way the world is going in this new age of AI that's going to be impending here in the next 10 to 15 years. It's going to really take over a lot of industries. These soft skills are going to be paramount, right? This relationship building and all that stuff is going to be critical. The ability to communicate, because to your point, we can find a lot of people that can work hard, right? Like, I mean, a lot of people, like you said, they reach out and they say, well, I work hard, I do this. Okay. I said, okay, great. But have you ever coached anybody? No, but I've done this. Well, okay, well, then this conversation is not a non-starter right now because you haven't even done the work yet. Right. And so uh to your point, the work hard is critical, essential, certainly not the only thing. And if it is the only thing, uh you may not get to where you need to get to.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of AI is actually growing and becoming a much more important piece to the NFL and college football puzzle as well, which is probably a different discussion for a different time.
Yeah.
But no industry is immune from
Right.
AI and the value and the importance that it will carry for years to come. I did want to touch on your work environment and ask you, what elements of your culture do you bring to work, even though it may not be overt? How do you kind of share that with your coworkers day in and day out?
A great question. I'm not sure how much of my culture I actually bring into work on a daily basis. I don't know that I do. Uh, Even holiday times and things like that. I don't know that I do. And I guess I don't necessarily think that as a negative. I mean, if people ask, I'll talk to them about it. If things come up, I tell every worker or friend that I've had that they get to go to an Indian wedding at some point in their lives, to have one of the best experiences that they've ever had. But other than that, yeah, I can't say I bring a lot of it. But I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think on a broader scale, just not my culture. Like, I don't know how many other people are bringing their culture in. Now, maybe we're in a society where some other, Catholic Christian cultures are already kind of inculcated with your work schedule. Christmas is off, etc. For a lot of different places. But I can't say I bring a lot of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't imagine that you would park an elephant, in the coach's lot. I mean, that probably would be against the rules. But I think that what you had mentioned earlier about the values that your parents instilled in you and the values that you carry each and every day, that to me is synonymous with your culture, even though
Yeah.
it may not be something that you're shouting from the rooftops. I think it becomes evident. And I have talked, frankly, since you and I talked about a week ago, I have talked to players that you have coached over the years. And I think that, your makeup shines through. And I think that part of that is our culture's makeup. So I think your story, while your career story is much different than many of us, I think your upbringing is very similar. And those traits that your parents instilled in you are essential in any field, even the NFL.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I appreciate that. And uh, I agree. I think those soft skills and those values are things I definitely do carry with me.
Well, look, you are a football coach, and by nature, football coaches are hired to be fired. Everybody knows that, unless you're Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh, who ultimately, did leave the Baltimore Ravens, but those guys had extended careers. By and large, it's a short shelf life for coaches, and the most successful people in your industry and in any industry, frankly, have a high tolerance for rejection. You have worked for 5 NFL teams and 2 college programs in your career. Uh, as I stated from the jump, you have extraordinary self-belief and resilience. You wouldn't have gotten to where you are at this point if you didn't. I am curious, when you look at yourself, what are 3 of the most important traits that you possess that you believe have served you well in your NFL life?
That's a great question. I would say uh, my hard work, my ability to communicate and relate. I'm going to kind of group that into one category, and I would say my ability to process information and I guess that ties into the communication. My ability to take in and process information and relay it back and simplify it. That's all part of my whole aura about myself is very teaching centered. And so I think that's those are a couple things I would say for sure. I would say loyalty has been a big thing for me, and in full transparency, like you said, everybody gets fired. I've been fired a few times already. It's gotten me in trouble some places where that has caused me to be fired. But I always go back to what I said when started in this profession with my wife. Uh, I got to be able to look myself in the mirror and make sure I did it the right way, the way I want to do it. And if it is what it is, and people, like you said, people always get fired, then that is what it is. But I got to be able to look myself in the mirror. So I think those are some things: my hard work, my communication, the ability to process information and relay it to my players and other coaches, and my loyalty. I think those are some values I kind of hang my hat on.
Why is teaching so important to you? Coaching is teaching, they're synonymous.
Mm.
Why? What about it is something that makes you want to wake up in the morning and get excited about?
Oh man, that's a deeper question to me than coaching. I mean, I pivoted from a pre-med career to get into education. I just think there's so much potential and so much growth in people. I had a philosophy background, love studying Socrates and uh, Confucius and the Tao Te Ching and the Bhagavad Gita and all this stuff. And all those are just lessons and different ways to learn. And I love the process of learning. I love learning. And so then when you become a lifelong learner, I think that inherently makes you somewhat of a teacher also. And teaching is a way to just have a great dialogue and a conversation about topics and kind of help people move past their differences and find some alliances and move forward in a certain way where you can grow. And that's kind of been my biggest, I guess, uh, excitement I get is the ability for people to grow and develop from something. And that's withstood the test of time for me. I mean, I did my student teaching at a public high school in New York City, right? And it was just amazing. And so like all those things, and then I became a professor. Uh, and it was just that ability to communicate information, see where somebody can go from point A to point B, And I will add this one thing. I agree. Coaching is teaching, and I would think the best form of teaching. I haven't done this now. I've got three kids: a 13-year-old, soon to be 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I think parenting is the highest form of both because there's an unbelievable lesson. I become that much better of a coach after I became a parent because my patience had to change, the way I communicate had to change, and I didn't realize that. I was a coach for probably close to a decade before parenting. Then all of a sudden, I become a parent. I'm like, oh my god, I might be the worst coach I've ever been around before. Uh, so I think parenting trumps that a little bit. But yeah, I think if I answered your question, I think it's such a passion. I think it's just a way to develop people.
I don't know if you're aware of this story, but Hall of Fame basketball coach Phil Jackson, who coached Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls during their dynasty, and then later Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant with the Lakers, would give out books to his players. Some were, meditation related, Buddhist related. He was a very spiritual guy. I'm curious, have you ever done something of that ilk? Give out literature to players who might be interested?
I have. I used to when I was the running back coach at Boston College. Uh, when I was a position coach, I used to do exercises with my players during training camp, where I'd give them some passages, and they'd have like a week to read it, and then we present it in the meeting room. Used to do it with some of my staff. The one I gave out to my running backs, I think I had 7 running backs at the time, which is a great book. I highly recommend to anybody, is The Traveler's Gift, I think by Andy Andrews. Uh, if you're a history guy, I think it's awesome because it basically takes you back in time to a point in history of tremendous decision makers and takes you through their biography, how they made those decisions at different points in their time. And so I gave that to them, and we used that, and we put it up the 7 lessons he had on our board, and we kept it there for the whole year. We always go by it. So yes, I do that. I started that actually for my doctoral dissertation. I gave all my faculty members that were on my committee the Bhagavad Gita
Yeah.
as my book because it was about duty, and I appreciated the duty that they had served for me. So I was trying to pay it forward that way a little bit.
That's great. That's a great story. I had not heard that.
Huh.
I
haven't told many that.
That's a great story. You've obviously taken the road less traveled. It's a unconventional path, as we've discussed. Broadly speaking, how important is having flexibility in anyone's life plan?
Oh my gosh. That's probably a better question. Well suited for my wife. Um, it's so important. And I'm so blessed to have a wife and a family, my kids, uh, that have been almost forced to have that. My kids have moved 5 times in 5 years here. Uh, and so uh, the adaptability and the flexibility, but I think the way of the world, I think that's what it is. I think you're going to have to be that way. I don't think it's the world that our parents lived in where you kind of grew up and you hope you had a job for 30 years and built a home and stayed there. It's such a transactional, transient world where you got to be mobile, you got to be interactional, and you got to be able to navigate it. And to be adaptive and flexible in this environment, I think is critical. And to be able to take all your experiences and learn and build on from them. And I think that's the epitome of being flexible is understanding the situation you're in and all the context that you're in, and then being able to make the best decisions for you and your family as you move forward.
Yeah, perfectly said. That's you should put that on your resume. I think that that encapsulates so many important values that people should keep in mind as they progress in their own lives. Just generally speaking, any perceived setback is really the best time to learn. That's really the growing time, the building time. You grow from these quote unquote failures. What did you learn from your 1 year as the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator? I know it didn't end the way that you would have liked, but since that moment, you've done tremendous things working for future Hall of Fame coaches, I should say, Pete Carroll, Sean McVay with the Rams, and now you're in Cincinnati. How did you evolve? How did you grow from your experience in Philadelphia?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I think I've grown and evolved in so many ways. A big way is really understanding who I am as a person, as a coach, understanding the people in the environment I want to be around, uh, that are like-minded, they're willing to grow and willing to push envelopes and work together collaboratively to make us achieve. right? Because at the end of the day, we get it, right? You're in this profession and your resume is on tape every Sunday, and the wins and losses speak to yourselves. And here we were at a time in Philly where, uh, the defense was up and down. I got it. But the reality is, as you know, Manish, you've covered the league for a long time. It's about wins and losses, right? We were 10-1, then lost 2 games to 10-3, and then they made a change. And not many people go through that where you're having the best record in the NFL, right? And you're making that change, and then you don't play so well after the change. Uh, and so what you learn from that is you learn that you need to be flexible, like you just said. You need to figure out a way to adapt and grow. And the lessons I've taken, like I said, is the people I want to be around, the type of organization. I think there's so many great things about the Philadelphia organization. But like I know where my blind spots were, right? I know where I failed and where I could have been better as a leader. And I know where uh, I needed to continue on the path that I was going on, right? So you learn those things about yourself. And as a coordinator, you learn even schematically, like, man, all right, maybe I should have pivoted to this scheme a little bit earlier. Maybe I should have leveraged this thing a little bit different. And so in that experience specifically with Philly, I learned so much of that. And you learn about yourself and your friends, right? And it caused obviously me, my wife, my kids, forced them to kind of uh, become more resilient, right, through that experience. And they did, and I'm so proud of them. I mean, from my who's now 5, she was 3 and 4 at that time, right? She kind of gets it a little bit, and obviously my older ones were right in it, and so they understand, my wife. But you learn that what really matters in life, right, is obviously the people that I love and that love me, and then how I can give back and serve an organization that I'm a part of. And you got to figure out what's the best fit for all of that from an organizational perspective, if they want to hire me, and from my perspective. And so I've been really uh, fortunate enough to be really picky with the jobs I've taken since then. Right. And, so after that year, I had an opportunity to go with Sean McVay in Los Angeles and would not trade that for the world, would willingly go back there if we had a chance. I mean, I think the world of him. I think he and I align with a lot of our visions and how we see the game and how we want to communicate, how we want to lead, how we want to teach. And he's just a tremendous individual, a brilliant football mind, uh, and somebody that can keep pushing me, right? And then you come here uh, and with Zach Taylor, just another authentic, truly level-minded, just like a pure-hearted person, right? And again, those are values that I talk about that I align with, right? So you get to be in those positions, and then you try to, because I think once you're in an environment that you feel great about, the work hours, all that stuff doesn't matter anymore, right? Because you understand that now you just want to commit to something and commit for the higher cause. And I think that's what's great about some of these experiences. No matter what, in whatever industry you're in, obviously ours is a team game, and I think it's one of the greatest team games ever. Is throughout all the other BS and all the other adversity that each individual's got going on, each coach has got going on, the organization's got going on, nobody, I mean, you guys are all fans, right? Nobody cares. All they care about is the product on the field. So we got to figure out a way to bring it all together every Sunday to go try to win a game on the field, which is the exciting part for me. Being in it, like being the man in the arenas, we got to get this thing right. So when we get out into that stadium, we got to give ourselves a good chance to win. And I think that's what's exciting. So I think those are just, like you said, man, what a great opportunity to grow, right?
Yeah.
For me. And we were able to do that, and we feel great about it.
Well, you should. I think I buried the lead here. Probably should have started off with this question because it's no secret that behind every great man is a great woman. How has your wife buoyed you during this topsy-turvy journey as a football coach? And frankly, how much longer do you guys think you'll be on the ride together as a family?
Yeah. Well, I hope forever we're going to be on this ride together. She is just unbelievable. I mean, I don't know what words there are to describe the effort, the strength, the resiliency, the aptitude, the commitment, the love, the support that she provides for me, my family. I mean, without her, I wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff. She she's the best teacher I've ever met. She's the best communicator I've ever met. So uh, everything I do, I kind of just run by her first to see if it makes sense. And she tells me, right? And that's great. And I think uh, unfortunately, because of the flexibility and adaptability, she's had to change careers, I think 4 or 5 times. She's an early childhood uh, special ed teacher by nature, and then had become a photographer and started a successful photography business, and then pivoted to editing and became an online editor, then a writer. Uh, and then before all that, she was a teacher. Uh, and now she's working on her own projects. And so her ability to adapt, I mean, the reality is she's a single parent for 6 months of the year, right? And she's raised two young boys and my daughter in such a high way. That makes me very proud. I just try not to mess things up for the other 6 months that I'm around a little bit more. But yeah, I can't say how proud of her I am, how thankful to her I am, and without her, I can't do it. And I tell you what, it's necessary, man. When you get on a journey like coaching, or I'm sure some other professions, uh, you need to have a good rock solid base that you can always rely on, right? And our profession I mentioned earlier is so public, right? It's you get all the praise in the world, and in the next minute you're going to get all the criticism in the world, and people are going to want to do all nasty things to you and say things, and you got to have that core resiliency, and she's provided that rock for us. And so we hope to continue it. As far as coaching, man, we're going to keep riding this. We didn't take that GW job back then, so when we didn't take it at that point, we just said we're going to ride it out as long as the professionals have us. So we're going to keep going, and if not, then maybe I'll call one of you guys to hopefully get me a job somewhere else as a professor or something.
Yeah, I think look, every wife, every mother is the MVP every single day, every single year. I think that goes without saying. I want to close on this. South Asians in sports. How do you think the organization can help others get into coaching, and perhaps more importantly and more broadly, how much additional value do you think the organization can provide now and in the future for those who are interested in a career in sports?
Yeah, I think they've done a great job. I think Neha and her team have done a tremendous job of just building their platform and growing this thing. I mean, I met Neha uh, and another Neha at about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, something like that, maybe 10 years ago, when I was a quality control in Chicago. Uh, and it was just starting at that point. I was really interested in it. And obviously, probably like many of you guys, young in my career, trying to figure out different pathways. Uh, and the fact that they've sustained over this last decade and it just keeps growing, and you have events like this, you have other networks and socials and gatherings, just to be able to create a community of like-minded people, I think is so critical, right? Because a lot of the calls that you asked about before, that people reach out to me, they just want to know, right? They want somebody to give them advice and have a reliable resource to fall back on. And quite frankly, in sports, it's harder, right? There's not many of, like, I mean, Manisha, right? I mean, between you and, obviously Ben Baby that runs the Cincinnati beat, I don't know how many other South Asians are doing beat reporting. It's different than like Kevin that's doing ESPN and things like that, and they have to climb a different way, but that's a different lifestyle that you guys got to deal with. And so to have that access, I think is critical. I think they're doing that. I think they're going to continue to do it at a high level, because it just creates a network of people that are like-minded, that you hope can benefit off of each other, and you can hope to grow. And I think they've done tremendous work, and I think there's so much room for growth that they're going to continue to do great work.
Yeah, it's an invaluable organization. And I know that there's people that have some questions for you. I'd like to open this up for questions. If you want to leave a question in the queue, you can do so. Otherwise, I'll leave it up to my superiors as to how we want to handle the questions.
So you've worked with a lot of great defensive minds on all of the staff you've been on. And because the offense and defensive staff have a lot of like voices on it. I know on offense, like when they were building a game plan, like the tight ends coach, quarterbacks coach, wide receivers coach, all, and even the head coach and the offensive coordinator all speak about like, oh, what they did well and what they had success with, like, in their history. How does that communication look on the defensive side? And what are things that you've picked up along the way from different, because I know you were attached to Fangio a lot, and so his scheme is something that you're seeing a lot in the NFL because it's been so successful. What does the communication look like on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Naveen, if you don't mind, and anybody that asks a question, if you could just say your name and like just give me what you're doing.
Oh, so my name's Navin Chandradat. I reside in Toronto and I work part-time for a venture capital firm in the States. And then during the
Right.
college and NFL season, I work for Pro Football Focus. I do
Nice.
I do a couple of data collection for depending on, what I'm tasked with for that week. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, no, great question. So I would say very similar, on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, it's just constant communication. You're really looking at a few things. You're looking at your own team and your own strengths and weaknesses and how you can leverage your talent and players in the positions they need to be in. And then equally, if not more important, is you're trying to figure out, I wouldn't say more important, but equally important, it's what is the offense trying to do against you, right? Then how do you leverage your scheme to figure out what the offense is doing and put your players in the best position to go ahead and execute. And that's the most important thing on defense is we need to be in position to be able to go finish and make the plays that we need to make. Uh, Difference is reactive, right? And
Yeah.
offense is proactive. They get to set the tone. We get to
Mhm.
react to it. And then we try to flip that mindset the way we try to coach. I try to coach is as much as we're reacting, we want to make sure that we're really physical and violent to the point of attack where they're feeling
Mhm.
us a little bit more than they're trying to dictate those terms. And so schematically, I think that's what we try to center on. And you mentioned Vic, who's a tremendous mentor of mine, and we run the very similar defense, obviously, because a lot of my tenants are from him. Uh, that is centered on really applying pressure to the quarterback, physical and mental, and
Okay.
that's what we try to do at a high level.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think Sudeep, you're the next one up.
All right. My name is Deep. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I'm a junior in high school right now. And I was just wondering, since like the job market is changing so much, I'm like particularly interested in like analytics and like maybe like the coaching side. I'm kind of undecided on that. Would you suggest like kind of like going like head first into like working with sports, or rather like try to pivot while in college? Because I still haven't started applying yet. But just like, what would you recommend in general?
Yeah, it's such a growing field, sports analytics, and football is the last one to always catch on. The NFL will always be the last on cutting trends, because that's just how we operate. We have our own trends, and we feel like we don't need to do what everybody else is doing. But we're the NFL's picking up a lot on sports analytics, and I think a lot of programs are starting to offer that. A lot of colleges are offering that. Obviously MIT comes to mind because they've been hosting the Sloan Analytics Conference forever now. It seems like where there's a big network there. But I would try to tap into that network and then look around and see what programs are offering sports analytics. And then, if you're really interested in football, I try to get to a football college if I were you, and go ahead and volunteer for that team, and
For
then
sure.
tell
All
them that
right.
you're willing to do anything you can.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Mohammed, you're next up.
Hi, Sean. Mohammed Kamran here. I'm
Hi.
a tight ends coach at Roosevelt University. I started coaching the year you became the defensive coordinator for the Bears. So you've definitely been a huge inspiration for me as I've continued my coaching journey. So I guess two-part question. First is, especially like you mentioned, like networking and getting access is always a big hurdle, especially for people that haven't had a lot of mentorship and stuff in the past. I guess what's your recommendation, especially for getting kind of that mentorship and kind of guidance to get into higher levels? And then second part with that would be, I guess how would I go about if I were to get some mentorship and access from you?
Yeah, great question, man. Well, first of all, I mean, you've got access, right? I mean, you're coaching college football, so your foot's already in the door. So you got to leverage that. And I would say, leverage the people that are going to give you the best network, because they're going to give you the best recommendation are your peers, your head coach, your coordinator, and then your players, right? If they swear by you, that means you're doing a good job, right? If your players are doing that, and then I would leverage those. Points, meaning your head coach and your coordinator, and keep those relationships going. And then, in college, I think a good way to do it is to get to these camps and you work some summer camps and you go and meet other places, right? I think a lot of these bigger schools, I believe now, they have like satellite camps and they got a bunch of big schools that go there with a bunch of small schools that go. You go work that. I used to work Lawrence First and Goal at Lafayette University, which was a big uh, the founder of that camp their kid had a disease. I forget which one. I apologize right now, but he started this football camp in the Northeast, and I mean, it gets like a who's who of Northeast coaches from high school through college. And then he usually gets a few NFL guys that had at least in the past come. So I used to go there and you work a tight end drill with a few coaches, right? And one guy might be the coach at Northwestern, and all of a sudden now you know that guy, and now you really reach out to him and you build that relationship and that network that way. And I think that's the best way to go about it, because those are the people that know your work ethic, right? And the reality is, if you're not that good at it, they're probably not going to vouch for you, which probably means you're not going to go far, right? And that's just the reality of it. And so I think that's the best way to leverage that. And then what was the other part? Something about me you asked?
Yeah, I would love to learn from you.
Yeah. You know what we can you could probably now you could probably help us connect through email or something, and then I'll give you some feedback there.
Sure, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Awesome. So we're coming up on time. I know I want to be mindful of Sean and Manish and the time that you've given. I think maybe Neha, if you want to close us out with the last question, and then we can close out from there.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Sean, my question is for something you had mentioned earlier that I think a lot of us struggle with in the community, which is like, keep your head down and work hard, and the work will speak for itself. But more and more, I think us South Asians who work in North America realize that that's not true. You need to do a lot of talking. You need to do a lot of self-advocacy. You need to play the game. You need to be part of politics. And that really clashes with the messages we were given as young children, maybe, growing up with our parents. And we don't know how to do that. We're not good at that. It feels very awkward. There's an imposter syndrome. And I know you said that's something you're working on. When I was an athlete, my parents would say, hey, just let the racket do the talking. But I realized that really didn't hold true, and it doesn't work out. It's not how you get promoted. It's not how you get seen. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what you might tell us or a younger version of yourself instead. How do you balance the humility, humbleness, working hard, being good with, making sure that you're playing the game as well the right way?
Yeah, I would say be cognizant, diligent, and put it at the top of mind, right? And force yourself out of that. For me, it was a comfort zone thing, right? That's just not what I was comfortable with doing that, because I didn't think it was authentic to me, right? At that point in my career, I'm way better at it. I still got to continue to get better at it. But I think if I would give advice to myself 10 years ago, 15 years ago, just put that at the front of mind, like go out and have that drink with a colleague if you need to, or put down the pencil or put down the clicker in my profession from tape and go chat to another coach on the other side of the ball for 5 minutes and learn from them. Ask them appropriate questions to help grow so people can see your knowledge. I think those are ways that I would have done it probably a little bit differently early on. It's essential. I think you hit it right in the head, man. It's essential. It's not cool anymore to say, man, I don't network, or I'll just do it like by my work. And that's kind of how I was a decade ago, right? Like, okay, that's great. Well, we'll see you in that role 10 years from now too, because you ain't going to move up. So I think you just got to push yourself a little bit from it and do it. But I don't know. For me, I'll just go back. You got to be authentic to who you are, right? So if you're a little bit shy, like I was, that's okay. Then do something. Give yourself a little bit of a goal, right? Like I said, 5 people every 2 months. Try to reach out to them. Go ask another person in the building a different question. Go talk to somebody if you're in a football building. Go talk to somebody in finance, and just develop that relationship over there, or in scouting, and try to spend 5 minutes with them. One thing I didn't do, and I think there's a title, Manish, you might be able to help me with this. Something about eating lunch, or like something about like sit at the cafeteria. There's some book that's about that. That it pretty much, like for me, like I grind, right? So I don't eat in the cafeteria. I eat at my desk and I watch tape, and then I eat dinner at my desk. But guess what? That's 15 minutes I probably could have spent eating at the cafeteria and building those relationships and eating a meal with somebody, and make up for that 15 minutes of tape I watched. So things like that. If your thing is that and you don't want to go eat, well, then force yourself to go have lunch with somebody else and meet somebody else that way.
Thank you. I'm hearing you say be visible,
Yeah,
be
that's right.
be
Put yourself
visible.
out there. You got visible and vulnerable, right? Part of growth is vulnerability. And people got to know that, and you got to feel that.
Yeah. Amazing. That's perfect. I think that's the perfect way to end it. Thank you so much, Sean and Manish. I know you guys are very busy, so we really appreciate you giving us an hour of your time for this session. I think it was amazing.